Chapter 3: 5 Stages of Human Civilization Development. For a long time, there has been confusion and misunderstanding in how people define civilization and barbarism, which has led to incorrect perceptions of the direction and trends of human civilization's progress. Karl Marx was an idealist who spent his life studying various phenomena and issues in human society. He analyzed politics from an economic standpoint and developed a theory of human society that, in hindsight, seems very absurd. In his theory, Marx divided human society into 5 stages: primitive society, slave society, feudal society, capitalist society, and communist society. Early communist regimes took this theory as a cornerstone, but over time, in China it became increasingly irrelevant and nonsensical. The theory has been changed a lot, adding terms like socialist society, primary stage of socialism, and socialist market economy, and latter abandoning ideologies altogether, replacing them with terms like well-off society, harmonious society, special, Chinese, socialism, or even the Chinese dream. This evolution reveals a complete breakdown of thought and clarity, ultimately resulting in an incoherent mess. Communism has become a disguise for autocratic regimes, and the legitimacy of the Communist Party's existence has long since been lost. What is politics? Politics should be understood as the organization and governance of power and social systems, with economics being just one part of it. How can the development process of economics replace the development process of politics? The claim that economic development determines the political system is a misleading lie. Does a more developed economy necessarily lead to more advanced politics? Does it mean that barbarians, who have acquired wealth by any means, can suddenly be considered civilized? While this somewhat aligns with Deng Xiaoping's black cat, white cat theory, it fails to address the fact that during China's era of poverty and weakness, the Communist Party shamelessly proclaimed that its socialist political system was more advanced and civilized than the capitalist systems of the West. This shows that barbarism is deceitful. It relies on internal repression and coercion, and external deception and lies. In fact, the continuous progress of social civilization comes from the ongoing elevation of human consciousness. This upliftment is driven by the insights and enlightenment of great thinkers, prophets, and masters throughout history. For example, China's 100 Schools of Thought's laid the foundation for China's brilliant ancient civilization for 2,000 to 3,000 years, and Europe's Renaissance led the world's civilization forward in great strides. It can be said that the continuous advancement of human consciousness and cognition has driven the progress of social civilization, including politics, economy, culture, and technology, moving from nothing to mediating, from the primitive to the advanced, and not the other way around. In short, the advancement of consciousness drives the development of material society. All the development and progressive civilization are guided by prophets and great thinkers, who follow God's will. Based on these views, we can scientifically divide human society's political stages into the following 5 phases. 1. The period of no governance. 2. The period of rule by individuals. 3. The period of rule by religion. 4. The period of rule by law. 5. The period of rule by virtue. These stages correspond one-to-one with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which will be elaborated on later. Contemporary Chinese society is currently transitioning from a period of rule by religion to rule by law. This is why the society is in turmoil, with people feeling confused and insecure. While their bodies may find temporary pleasures, their spirits remain in a constant state of escape. During this transitional period, people suffer from moral decay, loss of trust, selfishness, mutual harm, and a struggle to protect oneself while feeling helpless. This period of transition often leads to the rise of many philosophers, thinkers, and religious leaders. Looking at history, it is evident that whenever political systems transition from a lower stage to a higher one, there is always a cultural flourishing and a great awakening of consciousness. This is the external manifestation of civilizational progress. From the period of no governance to rule by individuals, early religions, mythological heroes, and legendary leaders like the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors emerged in ancient China. From rule by individuals to rule by religion, we saw the emergence of China's 100 Schools of Thoughts, while the Axial Age marked a period of philosophical and cultural flourishing across the world, including figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle in Greece, Siddhartha Gautama in India, and Jewish prophets in the Middle East. From rule by religion to rule by law, the West experienced the Renaissance, with countless artists, writers, and scientists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Dante, Copernicus, Shakespearean Galileo, followed by Enlightenment thinkers and modern scientific giants like Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, Newton, and Einstein. By analogy, when human society transitions from rule by law to rule by virtue, a similar cultural boom and awakening of consciousness will surely occur. China's period of rule by religion has been long, and it can be divided into 4 stages. 1. Monarchical autocracy took power, corresponding to the Xia, Shang, and Western Zhou dynasties, where the tribal alliance and feudal system prevailed, and vassal states pledged allegiance to the king, paying tributes in peacetime and sending troops during wartime. 2. Aristocratic autocracy seized power during the Eastern Zhou and Qin Han dynasties, where once the vassal sought to expand the power, subverting the king's authority, a centralization of power under an emperor and his nobles was inevitable. This led to the aristocratic autocracy era. 3. Hereditary scholar class controlled power during the Three Kingdoms, Jin, and Northern and Southern dynasties. As new emerging noble classes grew in strength, they began to control centralized power and push the emperors aside, leading to constant conflicts and societal fragmentation. 4. Commoner autocracy, which was made possible by the imperial examination system introduced during the Sui dynasty. This allowed elites from all classes to participate in governance, promoting political, economic, and cultural development. However, with the invasions of foreign forces, especially those barbaric regimes, and the corruption and decadence of rulers, commoner autocracy eventually loses its moral and social foundations, often degenerating into the most regressive religious rule, where violence, deceit, and manipulation dominate, and society falls into darkness. Medieval Western Europe and modern autocratic regimes that seized power through military force under the guise of democracy are examples of such regressive religious rule. These systems share the characteristic of having rigid, doctrinal ideologies, a fixed but non-aristocratic elite group, and institutionalized privilege and hierarchy. The ruling classes prevent power from being usurped through strict control of thoughts and speech, using the military, police, and secret police to suppress the people. The media is only allowed to serve the ruling class, publicly declaring that political correctness supersedes truth and facts, making lies and rumors commonplace. The entire society becomes paranoid, where the wealthy feel unsafe and flee whenever possible, while the poor are left hopeless, either resigning to their fate or resorting to desperate measures. Everyone attempts to gain power or profit by showing loyalty to the ruling power, and those who hold even the smallest amount of power tend to abuse it. In the later stages of religious rule, the society becomes increasingly degenerate, with the constraints of religion or law weakening while violence and deceit grow useful. This is the decline of moral standards and trust in society. However, the rise of commoner rule has paved the way for the next stage, rule by law. This is the inevitable progression of civilization and the correct choice for the revival of human nature. While the journey toward law-based governance may face obstacles and opposition from reactionary regimes and outdated ideologies, humanity will eventually move toward democracy and the rule of law. With the full development of a rule of law society, people's consciousness will continue to evolve, wealth will accumulate in a true market economy, and societal problems will be resolved within a legal framework. Eventually, humanity will naturally enter the period of rule by virtue. In a society governed by virtue, everyone is morally upright, their thoughts are pure, both the bodies and minds are utterly healthy. Social wealth is abundant, with no class divisions or wealth disparities. Of course, this is not the utopia imagined by some thinkers, nor is it the great unity often romanticized. Instead, it represents the harmonious coexistence of humans and society in a virtuous, law-abiding world. Then, some may wonder, is there a basis for the theory of the 5 stages of social civilization? Of course, there is. The reason is that Maslow's hierarchies of needs correspond to the 5 major stages of human social development. Therefore, just as the progression of human society mirrors the process of individuals' needs gradually advancing, both are a process where the soul leads the body toward continuous elevation and obedience to God. Now, let's analyze this in detail by connecting it to the theory of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. See Figure 1 the following page. 1. Period of no governance, yin and yang are both empty, low-level balance. This corresponds to the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy, the physiological needs. The characteristic of this stage is the primitive era, when humans only strive for survival, living by hunting and gathering, and fighting for their own existence. This period saw the emergence of families and early tribes. 2. Period of rule by men. Yin is solid, yang is deficient, imbalance. This corresponds to the second level of needs, safety needs. The characteristic of this stage is personal worship and the establishment of authority and credibility. The society glorifies individual heroes. Strength, courage, wisdom, or virtue determines power. Larger tribes and tribal alliances emerge, gradually forming early countries and primitive religions. 3. Period of rule by religion. Yang is dominant, yin is deficient, imbalance. This corresponds to the third level of Maslow's hierarchy, social needs. The characteristic of this stage is hereditary family rule or group rule, which is reactionary and decaying. The period of religious rule can be divided into feudal and centralized periods in ancient China. 1. Feudal period. Religion begins to interfere in politics, advocating divine right of kings, implementing hereditary systems, and hierarchical structures. 2. Centralized power period. Political power relies on military and religious force, implementing monarchical or usurped rule, with constant changes in power, dynastic rise and fall, and a never-ending cycle. When one religion or ideology ascends above political power, it becomes the absolute authority, using the fanaticism of its followers and the violence of the state to enforce its rule. The religious rule enters its darkest, most terrifying period. A typical example is the Dark Ages of Western Europe and the communist autocracy. The theoretical basis of this assertion is that while religions originally aimed for goodness and were fundamentally positive, yang energy, once they interfere in politics, they turn towards darkness, yin, and follow a misguided path. If religion rises above political power, becoming the dominant ruling ideology, it must evolve into the most barbaric and reactionary authoritarian regime. Characteristics of authoritarianism under the communist regime. 1. Institutional failure, policies changing from day to day. 2. People's indifference and mutual alienation. 3. Intellectuals are marginalized or blindly believe in scientific reasoning. 4. The lower classes blindly follow authority but also believe in rumors. 5. Ordinary people feel powerless to defend their rights and neither dare nor want to unite to resist. 6. The masses develop illusions of goodwill towards one party, own ideology rule, even suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. 7. The people relinquish all responsibility and power to the government and rulers. 8. Professionals abandon their expertise, seeing political affiliation or dependency as the only way to succeed or become wealthy. 9. The ruling Communist Party ignores calls for social change because mouse weakness is unaltered, leading to the accumulation of evil, she's excesses. Summary of characteristics of their rulers during the period of religious rule. They are described as bored, helpless, and shameless. They focus on 4 main activities until their death. 1. Bloody suppression within and military expansion abroad. 2. Engaging in sexual prerogative at pleasure and having numerous children. 3. Consuming exotic food and seeking immortality through alchemy. 4. Wasting public resources to build luxurious tombs. They are helpless because they refuse to give up power, even to their most trusted successors. They are shameless because even if they have a good nature, they will succumb to the flatteries and manipulation of sycophants, leading them to become tyrants and despots. Meanwhile, the common people live in despair. They have no opportunity, living in poverty and helplessness. They have no hope, struggling on the brink of survival and death. They have no dreams, lying down and waiting for death. Therefore, the conclusion is, all authoritarian rulers in the religious rule period are reactionary and barbaric, will have common people live in despair. 4. Period of rule by law, yin is abundant, yang is deficient, imbalance. This corresponds to the 4th level of Maslow's hierarchy, respect needs. The characteristic of this stage is openness, transparency, democracy, freedom, and equality of human rights. First, the concepts of legal system and rule of law are different and should not be confused. According to archaeological discoveries and historical records, as early as the time of Hammurabi in the Mesopotamian region, rulers began to formulate laws and implement legal systems, possibly even earlier. At that time, the majority of the world was still in the period of no governance and only a few regions were in the period of rule by men. True rule of law must be built on modern concepts and systems of human rights, freedom, equality, and democracy, guided by a fair, just, open, and independent judiciary. Freedom of speech and independent media can supervise government. Religions and ideologies should only be personal beliefs, with the freedom to choose or abandon them. Officials at all levels must be elected by the people, with fixed terms, and their personal and family assets must be disclosed and monitored by elected parliaments. The operation of power must be transparent. The three branches of government must be separated, with the military remaining neutral and no interfering in political disputes. Parliaments at all levels should mainly consist of nonpartisan representatives. The judiciary must be independent and just, with no party affiliation. Public officials should be presumed guilty, not the common people. The ruling class faces additional crimes such as dereliction of duty, abuse of power, corruption, bribery, unexplained jeopardy, leaking state secrets, treason, and betrayal. The three supervisory mechanisms in democratic rule of law are: 1. Term limits replacing lifetime or hereditary rule. 2. Separation of powers and mutual checks. 3. Freedom of speech and media supervision. This stage corresponds to the need for respect. It manifests in the liberation of individuality, where human dignity and equality shine everywhere, with privilege-seeking mindsets being swept into the dustbin of history. All people have the right to be treated equally, regardless of gender, age, birthplace, profession, wealth, or ethnicity. 5. Period of rule by the Tao, both yin and yang are substantial, high-level balance. This corresponds to the highest level of human needs, self-actualization. The characteristic of this stage is that popular willis unified and a harmonious world occurs. After a considerable period of rule by law, both rulers and common people will be able to carry out their duties and live equally, each pursuing their life goals, contributing to the collective human goal, spiritual elevation. Privileges are completely eradicated, power is equal, the law is just, and people trust each other. Society is civilized and progressive, with a prosperous and developed economy, and a harmonious atmosphere. Various industries develop healthily, and people truly practice, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. In such a society, why would anyone need to commit crimes, engage in corruption, or seek privileges? Moreover, in a society of rule by Tao, material wealth is abundant, society is orderly and beautiful, and people are not wallowing or reliant on material things. They can absorb cosmic energy through meditation, making their bodies extraordinarily healthy and long-lived, eliminating the need for the medical industry. Humanity enters a state of spiritual joy, noble ideals, and a complete unity of mind and body. This is the paradise that most religions preach and where God is always waiting for us. In essence, paradise is here on earth, but we simply haven't yet evolved into the spirit of civilization.